At this time, I'd like to call the Board of Commissioners meeting to order. And if you would please stand and ask Commissioner Del Palazzo for the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the freedom to meet and to plan. Lord, I pray for our country, I pray for our community, I pray for our world as we're facing the uncertainty. I pray for our leaders who are in control, Lord. I pray for wisdom when making decisions. I pray for the health of our community, Lord. Instruct us and guide us in the ways to go. Thank you for this meeting, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. At this time, are there any additions to the agenda?
Yes, ma'am, we have one item, the proposed fee to provide rapid food tests in our primary care clinic as part of the coronavirus testing. It's from the health department.
Okay.
And the abstract should be, in your material in front of you.
Right. And we'll just add that to the consent agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And we can remove the closed session for economic development as well.
Okay. So that would be item A of the closed session.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Any other additions to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Madam Chair.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and then the approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve tonight's consent agenda.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right. We'll move along to page 91 of your agenda, and that is the public hearing on Lee County's goal of participation of minority historically underutilized businesses in construction and repair contracts. Ms. Parrish, you want to walk us through this?
Sure.
Thank you.
As we're getting ready to bid on some of our projects moving forward, we're just taking a look at the contracting and purchasing policy and making some updates that we have found that we need to update. And one of those was the minority outreach plan. The board in your packet of commissioners in October of 1990 previously held a public hearing and adopted the minority and business outreach plan with a verifiable goal for participation by minority businesses for the 10% goal, which that is also the goal set by state statute and what the state is governed by when they go out to bid. There have been some changes to the statute since, so we decided just to go ahead and be safe and hold a new public hearing. We have also drafted the minority business policy, which is in the agenda packages, which will also be an addendum exhibit to the contracting and purchasing policy. Essentially what it sets out is the hub requirements that the local government must abide by when we have informal bids and then also when we have formal bidding requirements. When you get into the formal hub requirements, we also have this set out by policy that the contractors must have affidavits that they must fill out saying that they've tried to meet the goal as well. We looked at many different policies. They all tend to be very similar, so we have brought it to the board and just would like to have a public hearing if anyone wants to address it with the board.
Okay. All right, so at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor?
I do.
Okay.
I'm speaking in favor.
Okay, that's your speaking, okay? Anyone that would like to speak against? Okay, I'll close the public hearing, and we will revisit this later on in the meeting. We don't have anyone signed up for public comments. Ms. Campbell, did anybody send anything via email? Okay, all right, thank you. Old business is the Lee County Market Comparative and Pay Plan Study. Ms. McGehee.
We're passing out a hard copy of the PowerPoint.
You'll be used for things.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we told the consultants that they did not need to be here tonight, that we would handle their presentation for them. They both live on the further western part of the state and are elderly and did not want, travel and attend. So we told them we would take care of for them.
Well, they offered, but they were thrilled that they didn't have to come all the way from Blowing Rock, so that was good.
We appreciate their offer.
It should, did you?
It's moving on the screen. It's moving on the screen. Excuse me.
You're all right.
We can talk through it if you want. We can do that.
Okay.
For some reason, it's not moving.
May just be frozen.
Here, you can, there it is.
This presentation was put together by the consultants, and I worked with him today, and I have his phone number if we need to call him, but I hope we don't. This is just a view of the Lee County workforce that they did at the beginning of the salary study. If you look at the board, that's a standard deviation bell curve. In a mature workforce, typically 2/3 of the workforce will be located in the middle, and the other 1/3, would be on the sides. But that's a typical bell curve. So we have our own bell curve, and this is employees restricted by years of employment. If you look at that, you'll see that we have 22% of our employees that have been here less than 2 years. That's 22%. And we have 41.4% that have been here less than 5 years. And our average years of employment in 2019 was 8.9 years, and in 2017 it was 9.2 years, as you see that it is going down. Years in position, it just shows you how many years in position that we've had. Our average years in position is 5.5 years, which is not a real long time, but we had a lot of retirees over the last few years. This is a chart that talks about the percentage of salary above the minimum grade, and that is the salary grade range from minimum to maximum in our pay plan, which means it's 59% from the minimum to the max in the pay plan, and the midpoint is 29.5% above the minimum of the pay plan, and that's represented by the black bar. The number of employees with salaries below the midpoint of the job rate and their salary range is about 96.1%. These are numbers that were in your report if you saw that. But this chart indicates that 54.5% of the employees have salaries less than 10% above their salary grade minimums. So that shows that. And if you look on the right side, we have employees in the last part of the pay plan. We have 19% of the people that are anywhere near the max of the pay range. The next screen shows 10% of the employees by classification. These are the people that we hired, the last 10% we hired. If you look, the biggest place that we hired was detention officer, which you might call them jailers, we call them detention officers. If you'll look, we had 5 positions we had to fill. When it goes down to the sheriff's department, the sheriff's deputies, then we go into DSS, and then again the SROs. And this shows you how the people we had to hire in the last 10% of the workforce. Okay?
Joyce, IMC two,
Yes, sir.
SDSS?
Yes, sir. It's the income maintenance caseworker.
Okay, thank you.
They're the people that sit and take the one-on-one interviews with the
Right.
people coming in that need help. The last 10% that by department it shows that DSS, we hired the most in DSS for the last 10% because DSS had a large turnover of people that left. So we hired 12 people, and then we go to the sheriff, to detention center, health department, and on down. And that's where most of the jobs were open, that we had open.
Were any of those DSS departures retirement or just job changes?
Job changes. I don't think there was any retirements in DSS. Okay. Next is the average market salary comparisons. This is the comparisons I did with all the cities and counties that we had, and I'll show you those broken down too. But our average salary for our employees is $43,763, and it's 16% below the market average of $50,776, and that's of cities and counties. This is the county market salary comparison. We're 11.3% below the average. Market is 48,690, and our average is 43,763. You can see the average in the middle, and you can see where we are. And those counties that they looked at was Cumberland County, Harnett County, Moore County, Chatham County, and then Johnston County and White County. Okay, the observation of the consultants were that our pay grade minimum to max is 59%, and our pay grade differential is 0% between each grade, which is 4.6% between each grade, from like a grade 55 to a grade 56. Then we'll get into the market study. The counties that we looked at, I just talked about those. The cities that we looked at were Apex, Dunn, Fayetteville, Holly Springs, Morrisville, and Sanford. This is just an example of what we looked at. We took a sheriff's deputy and we went through each one of the cities and counties, and you can see what they paid. It's in your thing. Lee County is paying at a grade 66, $38,725. The recommendation was $38,725 or 67. So what we did, we took in between that, and we're recommending changing the grade 66 to $39,548. Instead of going to the $40,506, we're saying go in between $39,548. We took every classification and did the same thing with it. Every classification that we have. This is just an example of what we got. Again, we go back to the bell curve, and we're looking at compa ratios to calculate where employees need to be in the pay range. And so what we're going to do is use a compa ratio up to 10 years. And so we start out with 0, which is less than a year. We go all the way up to 10, which is a 1 compa ratio, which means they've been here 10 years. And our midpoint will be at the 1 for 10 years.
And that's the objective of the market, the midpoint of the market for that position. So the objective is to go from 0 to the market midpoint within 10 years, because that 5 to 10 year period is when we're really losing our people. We're training them, getting them here. We're not moving them through the pay grade, and then they're leaving.
The
So
growth needs to happen in that.
You see what happens in places like Moore, when they hire people, our policy says we start them at the minimum of the pay grade. So what the other counties are doing, they look at their years of experience in that type of position from the other, where they're coming from,
Right.
and they're placing them into their pay grade. Or they might have 4 years experience, so they would put them at .89, whereas they would get 4 years, start at 4 years experience instead of us trying to start them at minimum. This way you bring them in because they're experienced and you pay for the experience.
Right.
And that's how they were cherry picking our
Sure.
employees.
Yeah.
Is they were paying them in, because around us, this particular company or group did the pay study for everybody around us. So they were telling us how they were cherry picking us and taking our experienced people.
So that's what we've got to do, is look at having a plan like this to where we move people. And once you get 5 years experience, you move them a step. And then when you get 6 years, you move again. But when you get to the midpoint of your range, you stop. And the county manager and I are going to have to come up with a way to look at those people that are at midpoint going forward. We hadn't decided yet on that, we got some ideas on that. But the big thing is to get people to the market.
Right.
And that's what we have to do, is get them to market. And the recommendations were to recommend that we adopt a market-based pay plan, put each position in the pay plan where they go. I've got a spreadsheet that they fix for us, and it's been a booger to keep up with all these months, because every time we change something, we have to change something with them. But if we take every employee and place them where they need to be in the pay plan, based on years in the position, not years of service,
Right.
but years in the position. Like if someone gets promoted, they go back to the beginning of the pay plan to work their way through years in that job. Increased grades differential from 4.6 to 4.8 to begin moving our market forward so we can be close to the market. Next year, they say we should increase it 5% and go back and change our pay plan next year. And reduce the pay grade range from 59 to 55%. And adopt the philosophy of support our mission and our vision statements. Implementation recommendations move the classification to market supported pay grades. Place employee salaries on their pay grade at the comp ratio assigned, pretty much just to repeat what we said before, but use the comp ratios from 0 to 1. And we did find, in the study, they looked at every individual employee, and we did find that some people were due more than $5,000. So to keep the costs down, we're gonna cap that rate at $5,000 if someone got that much. But they would still be eligible to move each year till they get to the midpoint, right?
Correct.
The implementation recommendations, it's not cheap. It started out at $1.6 million, but by changing the percentages between the grades and everything, we came up with $530,438. The FICA and everything, all the benefits and everything, it's $125,289, and required funding would be $655,727. And we would like to do this during the budget, of the upcoming budget.
And that would get all the employees
Moving in the
on
right
track.
direction.
Yes, ma'am. It will put all the employees on track.
We're not asking the board to vote on this tonight because it was a lot of information to throw at you at one time, but, we probably will discuss it again before we actually jump into the budget, to show you the whole budget, because we need to know whether we're going to put this in the budget, because it changes all the salary numbers quite a bit, and, or we, don't put it in there, so we'll discuss it again, but we're not asking for any action tonight. A lot of information.
Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
No, but this is long overdue,
Yes, thank you.
long overdue.
Well, the
We're
last
getting
time we
a
did,
lot of head nods, so yes, it is.
the last time we did a pay study was August 2015, and it was done by Springstead, and the cost was approximately $281,000 that they said we needed. But at the time, we could not see and could not afford it, and the only thing we spent then to increase pay was $60,039, and that was in 2015. So it's been about 5 years. Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You did a great job.
Yes,
Thank
that's, I
And
know.
she did it in about 15 minutes less than if the other gentleman would have been here.
Also, thank you. Also, thank you.
Yeah, double thank you.
No, great job, Joyce. Okay, item B, under old business, that's on page 147 of your agenda, is the amendment for agreement regarding funds for Seal 2 services. And I think that's Ms. Parrish.
And I asked Mr. Randolph to be here in case y'all had questions that I couldn't answer. But if you recall, the board held 2 public hearings on this project back in 2016 and approved an agreement with Seal Services. This is a what's the name of this? The building, which one? building.
What, a building
This
reuse
is-
plan?
Is this the building reuse? Sorry.
This
I
is
forgot.
building
This
reuse
is building
through the
reuse.
Rural Center,
Sorry.
which is now under Department of Commerce. So this was a Rural Center grant, and this one was done a little bit differently than some of the ones in the past. So kind of under the new rules the Department of Commerce had. So.
But what happened was Mr. Randolph had brought it to us. They had completed their jobs and investment. They've received proof of that, but the agreement had technically expired, and so we just wanted to put in an amendment just to extend it so that way we could facilitate the payment. My understanding is we get the money. It was a $3,750 match that the county had to provide. So we're
Which
basically
was-
the pass through again.
Which was paid for by the company. So it's, the county doesn't really have money coming
Pay
out
for
of
it, pay
our
for it.
general fund to pay for it. But like I said, this is a little bit different way than it's been done in the past. The 5% match was paid by the company and they have paid the money. We already have their $3,750.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Just a question, what's our policy on average wage? What's that amount?
I think now it's up to right at 40,000, close to 40,000. At the time this was signed, I want to say it was like 37 or 38.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay. Any more questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, new business, page 159, the adoption of Lee County's outreach plan and goal for participation by minority businesses in building, construction, and repair contracts, as promised.
Yes. So now that we've held the public hearing, we can ask the board to adopt the policy, so essentially on this part of the board, you just have, or the agenda, you just have the resolution to adopt, and then once you adopt this, and then later on in the agenda, you'll also be adopting the purchasing policy, which this will be an exhibit to. But like I said, again, this just spells out the rules for both informal and formal hub participation. It's our outreach plan that the county must follow and bidders must follow in construction contracts. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has. Since we did hold a public hearing, we did check. I don't think we have an official policy, but just to be safe, if you could vote
Both
to
of them?
waive the policy.
All right, move to waive the policy.
Okay. All those in favor of waiving the policy, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Is there a motion on the adoption?
So moved to adopt the resolution and policy incorporated in the Lee County's purchasing policy.
Okay. All those in favor?
I have a question
Oh,
for
yes.
council. Who would the minority business owner contact if they've got a question about the criteria, how to get involved and all that?
So they can contact Santiago's position. I don't know the name of it. I should know this officially titled.
Is it-
Development Director.
All right.
Um,
Is it online?
Development Services Director.
It will be. We're working on getting all of this stuff posted to our website as well. And then I think the goal eventually is to have a list maintained by county government as well. And then that way, when we go to bid, we can contact the people who have contacted us to be placed on our internal list as well. But yes, we'll have it on there's like the state hub website. We can post these to that the hub businesses can go and look at. But we're gonna try to internally keep that database as well.
One concern I have is quite often some individuals want to apply, don't seem to understand that they may also have to bid on the projects. And that's where the reluctance comes in. But it's mainly because some individuals think that it means you automatically get to participate. That's why I want the clarity in place.
Correct, and they have to be certified.
Right.
There's like a certification.
Right.
I don't know what that process looks like, but they do have. There's a certification process that they
I
have to
do,
go
I used to handle it for the state, so
Gotcha.
that's why I understand the problems that we run into when we don't have significant minority participation.
And we also have a duty to report, both for informally what we did as an organization to solicit, and then when we move to the formal ranges, we'll also have a duty. There's 2 different forms that county staff will use to upload that, and that will all be funneled through the county position.
Okay, thank you.
Development director.
Development
Yeah,
director.
he was supposed to
Eventually I'll
go
remember that.
he was supposed to go to some training next week, Thursday and Thursday evening, but I don't think he'll be going.
Nope, not happening now. Okay, so, we have a motion. Any more questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. There's no way to shorten this one. Page 192 of your agenda, the resolution authorizing exemption from the request for qualifications process. All projects involving architectural, engineering, surveying, construction management at risk, design build services, and private-public partnership construction services where the estimated professional fee is less than $50,000. Sorry, but that's the title.
That's a mouthful.
I had to practice.
Recommendation?
I had to practice.
So again, this is set by statute. It's called the Mini Brooks Act, which sets out the requirements for procuring those for architects and engineering surveyors, and alternative construction delivery method firms. So when the professional fee is expected to be $50,000 or less, the county can exempt itself from the competitive bidding process. However, in order to do this, the guidance is that that's done on a case-by-case basis. So what you have in front of the board today is a general resolution exempting us from, or exempting the county from competitive bid for those types of professional services fees. However, what we also have is an exemption form for department heads, and instead of having them come to the board each time we need to get a professional fee in these matters, we delegated that authority to the county manager to sign. Eventually, the contract would have to come back to the board regardless because it's over $50,000. But on the front end, so we don't have to continue to bring projects back to the board to help facilitate that. We're asking and suggesting that the board adopt the policy and then authorize the manager to exempt on a case-by-case basis. And again, I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Or a motion?
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, page 196 is the adoption of the revised Lee County purchasing and contracting policy. And Ms. Spencer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
In your agenda, you should have a complete copy of the purchasing policy, along with several new exhibits that have been attached that Ms. Parrish has talked to you about tonight. Those being Exhibit D, which is the minority business and historically underutilized business participation outreach plan and guidelines. Exhibit E is the dispute resolution policy. Exhibit F is the request for qualifications exemption form that she just talked to you about, exempting people from under the Mini Brooks Act under $50,000. And there's also a new form for sole source justification. As you can see on the agenda abstract, when Ms. Parrish became aware of some of the issues with our minority outreach plan, we went back and reviewed our whole purchasing policy and found that we needed to make some other updates to it to provide more information to our departments on bidding and the formal and informal limits. Another issue that came up in reviewing some other policies, and we looked at several different policies, larger counties, counties in our population group, and other things. But one thing that came to my attention was the contracting authority of our manager. In our budget ordinance, we also addressed that in addition to our policy. Our manager has been at $20,000 for several years. In reviewing policies from counties around us, we found that Chatham's manager has authority up to $100,000. Harnett has $100,000. Moore does 50,000, which ties into the Mini Brooks exemption. And looking at other counties in our population group, they ranged anywhere from the 20, very few who are still at 20. Haywood County was one of the few that's at 20. Most everybody is either at 30, 50, 90, or 100, and there's varying qualifications. The 90 is the state's formal threshold for bidding purchases of goods and services, goods and equipment. 50,000 ties into the Mini Brooks Act that you just heard about. 100,000. I don't know why some of them picked 100. So I could justify the 30, the 90, the 50. 100 kind of threw me because it just makes your brackets break down. 30 is the state's informal threshold. Now we informally bid anything over $5,000. So after reviewing this, we did in this policy raise the manager's authority to $30,000 if you so choose to approve that at this time. Other than that, the other changes, like I said, were relatively minor other than the additions of the additional exhibits, but we tried to analyze this and pull all the information. When we did this last, I kept it kind of brief and knew we had other documents people could go look at. We found that didn't work the best in the world, so we took advantage of this to really try to lay out so they have one place to go to get everything. So at this time, we would ask that you consider the approval of the policy, including the increase of the manager's authority to $30,000.
And if I may, just real brief, sorry to interrupt, but I hope on the agenda was the memo that I just kind of broke down. The other thing just to touch on, because I didn't touch on it, but we did lower our formal bidding for the construction and repair from 500 to 300, and that just follows that formal hub, which the contractors have to follow. And as we've talked about and staff, is that really there's not a whole lot of between 3 and 5. Normally our projects, from what I understand, is either 100 or they're well above 3 or 5. So
I apologize.
no, that's okay. I
Get that.
happened to notice that, but that was it.
I move to adopt the revised county purchasing contracting policy before somebody moves it to 100,000. I'll stick with the 30.
Stay with the 30?
That's right, yes ma'am.
Okay.
How's that do it?
Any discussion? I have one question, and I don't know whether to direct it to you or a combination of all three of you.
We'll touch on it.
Okay, but is there a benefit to moving it to 50 to match with the Mini Brooks Act? Or not? I know you recommended the 30, but I'm just,
My opinion, personally, it would just speed up the process of certain actions. Because it just, if we were to run into a situation and we needed to get a consultant quickly, at 50,000, with him only having 30, he can exempt it, but it's still got to come to you for approval. That's the biggest thing with the higher limits, is it can just speed up the flow of the process, because we can move with his approval versus having to make sure we come back to the board.
right.
You can always, if you were to consider, ask that anything he approved over a certain amount be reported to you.
That was my only.
That's what he has to do on change orders anyway.
Let me test drive this one first.
Okay, I understand you. I got you.
Let me get comfortable with the
I
30.
understand. We can always hold an emergency meeting if we need to authorize something quickly.
Madam Chair, can I ask Dr. Crumpton, Lisa, or have we run into situations where the 20,000, I mean, we're changing from 20 to 30? How many times has that happened in the past 5 years?
As far as having to come to the board with anything that's over 20,
Yes.
quite a bit.
Okay.
But
How much
it's-
would this alleviate going to the 30,000 level?
It will alleviate, some of the, mainly, most of the stuff is in Russell's area. And it has to do with repair of buildings and, HVAC units and that kind of stuff, which we have to do anyway. So most of that would be in that area, and,
We do need an emergency meeting to do it.
yeah, so it's, we have tried to do this before, where we've tried to increase the threshold and but I learned to deal with it, but it does hold things up. So especially when we have something that, like we have a HVAC unit that breaks, we have to make the call to, you know, what we're gonna do in the interim until I can get to the board to get it approved. So this will help. And like Mr. Reeves said, let's give 30,000 a test drive and see how that works out for everybody.
One other thing I do want to point out is vehicle purchases. A lot of times they fall between the 20 and 30. So what the policy says is that if we are buying a vehicle on state contract that is below 30,000, the manager will approve it. If we are bidding out a vehicle, regardless of the cost, that will come to you for approval. So if it goes out for public bid and is not purchased from state contract, you will have the approval process. Okay, I do want to point that out.
Any more questions or comments? Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, item D on page 259. Declare residents located at 192 Tabitha Lane as surplus and authorize staff to solicit seal bids. Ms. Parrish.
Yes. So this is part of the site that the county purchased as part of Project Forge. It has a residence on the site of the property, and we would like to move that residence. So we're asking that the county declare it surplus personal property. So we're going to ask for it to be severed from the property, and then staff is going to advertise and solicit bids, and then ask for sealed bids. So we've been working with General Services with Mr. Spivey, and he'll get ready to bid that out and get sealed bids, and hopefully someone will put a bid to move it, and it'll go to the lowest or the highest responsive bidder.
We have had interest in the house.
Oh, okay, good.
I think we could demolish it, but it would cost very much money.
One thing to keep in mind when we do demolish that, we have a different outlook on it, because when you tear it down, if it has any asbestos type materials in it, then that responsibility comes to us. But if we sell it as is, then it's the buyers, it's up to them, and they will move it whole. But when we get into demo, you're breaking up the asbestos fibers, and then we got another scenario, because I ran into that on the properties, the Swain properties.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up costing us quite a bit because of the asbestos siding, and this, we don't never know until you get into it. So it's to our advantage if someone buys it. It's a nice home. It would be good for someone to move. It's got some buildings that will go with it as well too. So somebody looking, possibly someone close by may have properties that they can do this home to, and it's really nice. They had well taken care of it. It's an older home, but I feel like it's something that we can move, and hopefully someone will take some interest in it.
Yeah, the house is added onto in sections.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really look at it and see where they could cut
You can cut. Okay.
in sections, it would move easily. So
Good. Okay.
it,
All right,
we think we'll do pretty well on a sale.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Okay. Any more questions or discussion? Are we gonna set a time limit if they purchase it as to when they remove it off the property?
I think we did adopt some. I can't remember exactly. We drafted an initial advertisement. I don't remember what all of
No,
it is.
it's okay. I just, I feel like we need to put
30
some
days.
kind
There was a
of.
time limit in there.
Yeah.
Was it 60?
Yeah,
60 days? We
was-
did something. in
Okay,
there,
that's what, okay, just clarifying. All right,
but we'll
okay.
work that out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. All right, page 263, adopt Lee County Government Social Media Policy, Ms. Brown.
Hello.
Hello.
So the policy you have in front of you, the last social media policy the county had established was adopted in September of 2010. It's been a long time, so instead of revising, what I did was basically start from scratch and redraft. So the policy you have would completely replace the last one. It goes into much more detail, establishing definitions, social media strategy, also very clear guidelines over ownership, user behavior, and content. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any comments or questions?
Who is the designated appointed administrator?
There will be two. It will be myself and the IT director.
Oh, I mean, sorry.
And I did also include a provision so that we don't find ourselves in the same situation 10 years from now, that the policy, because social media changes so frequently, the policy will be reviewed annually and updated appropriately.
That's smart.
Is there something brand new every week?
Every
it
5
seems like?
minutes.
I can't keep up. I heard a new one again today. It's crazy. Okay? Any more questions for Ms. Brown, or concerns, or ideas? Or motion?
Good job. Motion to approve.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay. Financial report. Ms. Minter. We'll enjoy this one.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Before you have the January financial report. As usual, sales tax run 3 months behind. Property taxes were 1.3% of where we were at the end of January 2019. As far as sales taxes go, we are anticipating that we will see a drop in those. Of course, they run 3 months behind, so it'll be a while before we know those numbers. But if you look at the sales tax reports, and I'll jump ahead of myself, that are attached to your report, while we went back up in November from what we saw in October, it's still those refunds that we saw hit us in October are affecting our growth here locally. Now, our two sales taxes that we share per capita across the state, Article 40 and 42, seem to be maintaining themselves, where our local taxes, which says to me people are not shopping as much in Lee County as what we're seeing shop across the state. So hopefully that tide turned for December. December numbers are in, but I have not had a chance to process those yet and get you new reports. So we'll get those out to you for the next meeting. As far as expenditures go, the target's 58.33%. As you will see, we still have quite a few departments exceeding that, even with taking the encumbrances into consideration out of the numbers. Most of those are for the same reasons you've been seeing. The new one that popped up is the court facilities, and that is because of the payment to Harnett County for the Veterans Court. So, but the others are all there, and they'll should balance themselves out as the year progresses. And I've already spoken to you about the sales tax reports through November. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. And we will also be monitoring our investment earnings. We were already starting to see our investment rates drop from the previous drop in the federal rate, and with the Fed's dropping the rates again yesterday, we are anticipating to continue to see a drop in our investment earnings. So where we had a really good year last year, and we're looking good, we anticipate that we'll see a little bit of drop in that. We had a visit for cash management last week, and they forewarned us that they were expecting another rate and a drop in the Fed's rate. They were not expecting it to be on Sunday. So everybody's kind of scrambling.
About refinancing.
Right now, we have not been approached over any refinancing. Most of our debt at this point is not in the stage that it can be refinanced. Where it will help us, hopefully, if we can get to the market, is what we will be borrowing in the near future. We have plans to do an installment purchase. We were hoping to get it out in June. But right now, we are worried that we may have to delay our bid process because of the issues with the virus, that we may not be able to do our pre-bid conferences as we had planned, and that will delay when we can go out to bid. But hopefully, the rates will pay off for that.
Thank you.
But again, our financial advisors are monitoring it, but at this point, if I remember correctly, we do not have any debt that's refundable at this point, at that stage.
Any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, county manager's report.
Madam Chair, I just want to make sure that the item we added on the rapid food test was put on the consent.
Yes.
I think I missed that when that was done, so thank you for doing that. I'm gonna hand out one item, and we'll get to it in just a few minutes as part of my report. Obviously, the last few days have mostly been spent in dealing with the coronavirus and the impacts here locally. And things kind of ratcheted up on Saturday when the governor ordered the schools to be closed. And so we've been dealing with quite a few things since then. There's also been lots of rumors and lots of things out on Facebook. So and a lot of questions are headed towards the health department that really aren't health related. So yesterday decided to move forward and set up a communications team within the EOC, not fully activate the EOC, but to activate the communications piece. We have phone lines and that type of thing where people could call in and ask us questions. We can also set up an information line where we can post information periodically to keep those, information getting out to the public about what's going on. So we've decided to try to get ahead of that. I have Santiago and Jamie Brown and Shane Seagroves working together to get this set up and get this moving quickly. We hope to, we are going live tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock answering phone calls. So we've had a team set up. Jamie's running one team, that's the communication outbound team, and Santiago is running the communication team where the inbound calls are coming. And let's see, I do have some phone numbers to give you in just a second.
I was gonna make sure I left mine in the car.
Gotta make sure I get them right. Let me make sure I get them right.
Did you write them down too?
Yes, I did bring them.
I have
I did bring them. Let me see. That's the health department number. Don't want to give that number out right
Here,
now.
you want Jamie to do it?
have them.
Yeah. The information line to call in to ask questions is 919-352-3360. I don't have that other number, Jamie. I thought I wrote it down. I did not. Either that or I left it in the EOC.
Sorry, so that we're deeming that number that the managers reviewed as the information hotline.
Right.
And then we will have a COVID-19 emergency update line where these will be pre-recorded messages that will be recorded we're aiming for 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. And those, that number is 919-718-4686. And the messages will be recorded in English and Spanish.
Okay, great. That's very similar to what we did with the hurricane.
It's the same number,
Right, okay,
yes.
okay.
So it's the same numbers, and we're setting up the same deal. And so every morning, and for the foreseeable future, our little COVID-19 response team will meet at 9 o'clock, and then we'll update the information line where people can call and get the information at 10, and then throughout the day. So we think we have a good plan set up moving forward, and some people we're pretty excited to get involved with it today. Thanks to the health department, Heath and his staff, they worked overtime over the weekend and fielded a lot of phone calls. But we want them to call our information line in the EOC first. If it's just something like, do we have to close restaurants or, anything that's non-personal health related. If we do get calls about, someone's health, says I'm not feeling well, that kind of stuff, we have a few questions we're gonna ask. And then if we, deem they need to call the health department, we will give them the health department's number and try to transfer. Hopefully we'll transfer over, but if not, they'll have that number as well. So that's the game plan on that.
Will those lines be recorded?
Pardon?
Recorded?
No, sir. HIPAA rules would apply, so if someone starts speaking about personal health issues to us, we cannot keep a record of that.
Okay.
So, and that was another thing that came up today was that, you know, the health department staff is certified to talk to patients that are coming there. The people who are manning the EOC are not. So there has to be a line between what we can talk to people about and what we can't. When it gets too personal, it's gotta go to the health department. But really, they were inundated with calls on every topic and subject related to the issues surrounding this, and we've got to get that away from them so they can get, you know, to addressing the health issues. And so we've set that up. They have a support team in place now. We're looking forward to helping them. But that's been our issue all day today. We did meet with the city and the town, the community college, and the schools today to try to coordinate some information back and forth. There's really no updates from the schools other than the closing for 2 weeks, and there's really no update from the community college. They've stayed on spring break this week, and they're trying to figure out how to get labs back into place next week, and doing online schooling for their classes. The city and the town are concentrating on their services and making sure they keep up and running, and there are concerns about first responders, so we're all trying to get PPE equipment in place for the first responders and make sure the 911 dispatchers are taking the appropriate information, make sure that our responders know what they're getting into before they get there. And I think that was pretty much everything we discussed today, went over. But it's ever evolving. I would encourage the commissioners, if you have any questions, to give me a call, or give Shane a call, or Jamie, or Santiago, and we will keep you updated as best we can. Going backwards in my report, the courthouse and government center renovations. We're a little concerned that the bid will not go out on April 3rd because we're not sure that Mosley Architects policy right now will allow the architect to be here to basically walk all the facilities with potential bidders. So plus you're inviting people into town who weren't from here, and so you're contemplating whether we can do a pre-bid. And in a project like that, doing a pre-bid conference is mandatory.
Yep.
I mean, it's a very complicated from a design project, so if they have any questions about demolition and renovation, so those projects may get put on hold. And the Parks and Rec plans, Withers is still willing to move forward, but we're gonna have a conversation with them about whether we're gonna do that or not. The next thing I guess we need to talk about is, our April 6th meeting, and what you all want to do with that, or wait about that to decide what to do. But the business of our government will continue, and we have to stay open, and we have to keep going. So we need the board to be able to take business action like we did tonight to help us move forward. So I'll let the chair start discussing some of that a little bit.
Okay.
If she'd like to.
Yes, thank you. We've had a lot of discussions today, manager and clerk and attorney. And, as y'all know how I am, you hope for the best, but you gotta plan for the worst. And with what we're being told as far as, the next few weeks, my concern is that, a majority of us unfortunately might be under the weather and or be married to, or living with, have a child, a parent, a spouse that has the virus, and we can't risk it coming out. So I had Ms. Parrish and Ms. Gamble dig deep and call all sorts of folks, and our policy right now is we can participate in a meeting by phone. And, I think several of us have done that over time. But our policy is you can't vote. So the Institute of Government has said, because my thought early this morning was, well, let's just waive that policy, so that if somebody is sick, they can participate by phone like they've been able to, but we will allow them to vote. And we'll waive the policy tonight just as a temporary thing, because of the emergency situation that we're in with the public health concern. But Whitney, if you wanna weigh in on this, but I mean, the crux of it is that it really is, if we do it that way, then we all need to do the call in and not have some here and some somewhere else if we're gonna vote that way. Is that correct?
Yeah, it gets a little tricky, but what we, the number one goal is obviously to at least have a quorum meet in person. That way we can move forward with county business. And if you have a quorum, then we can do that live. And then we still have the opportunity to have it open to the public, at least, tonight everyone's kind of further apart, or we can hold it somewhere
Right.
with a larger space available. We did check in the circumstance that most of the commissioners, for whatever reason, or it's just unsafe, depending on how the virus spreads, we could allow for a complete remote participation. It would be tricky. We would set up some type of call-in number. What is it, like Group Me or Meet? Go to meeting. What we would have to do, talking with Jennifer, is we would go ahead and notice it at least 7 days before. So we would need to know 7 days beforehand that we were going to meet that way. We would provide the public with that call-in number, the codes and all. By statute, we do have to have at least one public comment section, per month, such as meetings. Even, we have to have one meeting a month. So what we would like to do is push out, somehow we would coordinate it, but push out to the public that they would either want to sign up for public comment or provide their public comment ahead of time. Somehow we would provide that to the, to the members of the meeting in that way. So there are ways we can do it that way. Obviously that's not ideal only in emergency type situations, but we need to be prepared in case we get to a, situation where we would have to do that.
Because that was my concern, is, hopefully everybody will pay attention to what's being directed by the CDC, and it'll be minimal here, but I didn't want us to get to a point where we wouldn't be able to have a quorum and we would need to take votes just to move county business along, and then we can't meet and we can't vote on a different way to meet, so we're stuck. It's just it's not that we'll meet that way the next time, but it's just truly to put an emergency option in place. And then I talked to Mr. Reeves, I talked to the manager, and we've had a busy day today. I haven't been able to get around to all of you, so to have that discussion as we go through this, I'm a firm believer in practice what you preach, so I'm not excited about being in this room and we're not 6 feet apart like I tell everybody, to be. So maybe at our next meeting, if we're all healthy, and Lord willing, is maybe move it to courtroom 4, and then that way we'll have a lot more elbow room, and we won't be as concerned if we have a larger crowd come, because I'm going to tell somebody to leave or stand out in the hall and come in later or something. So I'm just asking for
Yeah, we put some
advice.
suggested language if the board were to choose to go ahead and to vote for the remote participation. And like we said, it would just be in those emergency situations, but as the chair said, who knows what may happen between now and
Right.
April.
Let me ask you a question on the public comment piece. You were saying they would notify you if they were interested in making public comments over the phone?
I think we could do it one of two ways. I think we could allow them to call, like Jennifer could keep a list. If someone were to contact her and say, I would like to participate in public comment, then the chair would allow that person, we'd have a list and say, okay, so and so, you know,
Just
give
like we
your
call
3
them up
minutes.
here, right?
Or maybe that we would even allow them to provide public comments to the clerk to be read by the board or chair. I think there's some different ways we could offer that, maybe.
I'm just
We'd have to look into it, and I'm sure we're not gonna be the only county
No.
dealing with this as we move forward. We've got our listservs, you know, things are constantly circulating our listservs as well.
I just wanna make sure you got a way to cut them off at 3 minutes.
Well, I can still, I'll be on the calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, the staff still has to monitor, you know, however electronically you put it in place, so. We may have a mechanism where we can just cut that person off. I know on Zoom I can. So if we're in the right platform, that person's talking and their 3 minutes is up, we can just click on that button and they're done.
I listen to Swap Shop, and I wish I had that. Authority.
That's, yeah, good point. Okay.
Hopefully we won't have to do that then. No.
Everybody remembers the last time we went through a declaration of a state of emergency in the county. There were some issues with putting curfews in effect and that kind of thing. I don't think in this case we'll be putting a curfew in effect. We won't be limiting alcohol sales and limiting the hours of retail businesses or anything like that. This declaration would be mainly to make sure that we get reimbursement from the federal government for expenses that exceed our normal operating costs to run the county. So it would make us eligible for grants from them. And then the other thing is if we had to close facilities but wanted to allow our employees to go into those facilities, which is kind of an odd thing that the school of government advised us about today, but we would need to have that declaration to do that, because when a building's open, it's a public building, those public places should be accessible, but it would give me the authority to make sure that certain places in our buildings are not accessible to the public while our people are in the building, cleaning the buildings, doing work that they need to be doing. Obviously this building here, as long as DSS and the health department need to service people, this building will stay open. But we have other buildings that we can close, but we'll probably have employees in there working. That's one of the things we had talked about was, whether we could get employees to work remotely. We have identified some employees that will be working remotely. We have to set those systems up for them to do that. But we plan on trying to keep most of our employees working in their current location or in the EOC. So, but the declaration helps us do those things, and it's not the one we're preparing right now for the chairman to sign would not, create a curfew or anything like that.
It's mainly to facilitate things.
And then with us partially opening the EOC, the emergency management will be monitoring what we're doing and makes us eligible for those grants.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we've been doing today.
And our ordinance allows the chairperson to declare a local emergency by way of the ordinance, but we just.
Right, I mean, we were meeting tonight.
Yeah.
And so after the meeting today, I said, well, we'll just discuss it and see if you had any problems or advice or any more ideas or anything, but I mean, I certainly don't wanna put us in a position where we can't apply for grants or reimbursement because we didn't do this.
So technically what we're saying, and Dr. Crumpton can confirm this, is that from this point on, if we make this declaration, we open ourselves reimbursement for any costs and expenses above and over our normal operating costs that are entailed into this situation we're dealing with now.
Correct. And the real thing where I see the most cost is in any overtime that we would put in with emergency management folks and the folks who are manning the EOC. So that's the biggest cost that I see right now. And then we'll be feeding those people. So it's really the cost to run the EOC that I see right now is something that we can get reimbursed for.
And then allowing you the opportunity for the facilities if the need were to arise. Because apparently you don't need the local state of emergency to close a facility
No.
or to restrict some of the access to the facility, but if you wanted to open to limit the access, but if you wanted, like Dr. Cronin said, if you want to open and restrict people, you have to have a local state of
In a
emergency.
public facility, public means public. Yeah.
I move we declare a local state of emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and according to our ordinance, authorize the chair to formally execute the state of emergency and authorize any superseding declaration.
Okay. Any more questions or discussion? You know, and as far as that, the last two words with the superseding declarations, you know, in the event that anything would require us to do anything else, we would certainly get that information out to the board before we move forward, is my personal feeling on that.
Well, again, it's just a precautionary
Right.
measure.
Absolutely.
Be in place, not
Absolutely.
after the fact.
Okay? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
There's one other option you didn't mention, and that was allowing the manager and other staff to look at April agenda and see whether we really need to be here or not.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about that for April
Yeah.
6th, right?
Softly soon with what we're looking at.
Yeah,
Or go to one meeting and then.
In April, yeah,
yeah,
the second.
that's it.
Yeah.
We will look into that and talk with y'all about what we have coming up.
We don't need to vote on that per se.
Not yet.
I will.
If you want to go ahead and make the motion, make the motion.
I move that we have one meeting in April.
Okay.
And if anything crazy, we can always do an
We'll
emergency.
call a special meeting if we need to.
All right,
So we're going with April 20th, sir?
I'm good, fine.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
One
more,
item
okay.
for me. I passed out a policy that on leave that I thought about over the weekend and worked with our human resource director on. We have some issues with parents mainly of that work for us who have children at home now and who are having issues with finding people to work with them. I mean, to stay with them and that kind of thing. So, and plus we're gonna have some folks that will be unemployed for a little bit. So, this was our suggestion to the board that we adopt a personal leave policy associated with a pandemic. So this not only can occur this time, but could be used in the future. And it allows benefit and non-benefited employees to essentially get 1 week of paid leave to take care of issues associated with the pandemic. And then under item 3.2C, it also allows our employees to use vacation or sick leave during a pandemic declared event to cover missed time that the personal time accrual that we're giving them would not cover. So let's say it extends for a long period of time, and these people have to be out taking care of their loved ones. They can use, and it's not someone that's sick, it's just that like they need to be home to take care of them, they can use their sick leave. That's not currently in our sick leave policy. Our sick leave policy is for when you are sick. So looking at the accruals, we have some people who have lots of vacation and no sick leave, and then we have some people who have, a lot of sick leave but no vacation. And so you look at that and you're trying to figure out what's best for the employees so that in this unusual time can take care of their families and their loved ones. So this was our suggestion to get things rolling on that piece. And fortunately, right now we have a few people that have this issue, but not a lot. So probably less than 20. So most of our parents have been able to make arrangements, at least for the short term, but if this draws out, this will at least help them try to get through it. And use their leave accrual to do it.
Need a motion to approve this.
Yes, ma'am.
So moved.
Any more questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner comments? Okay. Commissioner Reeves?
Be brief and be safe.